Good afternoon. We are going to have a chat today about coffee. Let me get Jonas in here real quick. Hello, everybody. Jonas. Hello. Why aren't you working? There we go. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. Just waiting for Jonas to join. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Ethan. Hello, everybody. Let me see where Jonas is at. So today we're going to talk coffee. Jonas. For some reason, it's not working. Some coffee out for delivery today. Looking forward to it. Love to hear that. Got all of those packed up the other day. Jonas is unable to join. All right, let's see what's going on here. Trying to invite again. Sorry, folks. There he is. How you doing, man? Good to see you, Jonas.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Can you hear me
That's
okay?
Yeah, fine, totally fine.
Awesome. So, wow, a lot to talk about. I'm trying to think about how to even cue this up. I looked back at our last chat and I couldn't believe it's been almost, I think, 4 months since we last spoke.
Whoa.
Or actually 4.5 months almost, really, which is kind of crazy. And I think a lot has happened since then, as we all know. And so for all those who joined, today we're going to kind of talk about Brazil and some of the events that they've unfortunately gone through in the past couple months, and really just how that affects the market, and just kind of talk about it in a broad sense to hopefully give you guys some value on what we're talking about. Jonas is on the ground in Brazil, and Jonas, I'll let you talk about yourself a little bit here, to kind of talk through what's going on in Brazil and how it affects the rest of the coffee world. So, Jonas, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jonas Ferraresso. I'm a coffee agronomist that work in fields in Brazil. I work in the São Paulo state and Minas Gerais state in about 12 farms in different areas in Brazil. And like everyone read about the terrible frost that we had here and impact so many farmers in Brazil. And some of these farmers are my clients that I work on the ground. And some farmers lost 70-80% of the coffee trees because of the frost, but there are farmers that have just mild impacts of the frost, and some medium that lost about 15%. Some will could work with some pruning and cutting, and maybe the coffee tree will recover. Now in Brazil, we were talking about 15 to 12% of the Arabica area was hit by the frost that we had about 3 times in about 10 and 15 days ago.
And just to give everyone perspective, and please correct me if I'm wrong, these are things that I've read
Okay.
and researched, but Brazil is 20% of the world's production of coffee. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's if you think about Arabica, you are right.
20%. So it's actually higher than that for Robusta,
Yeah,
if you
because
include everything.
usually we have like the production average is about 50 to 60 million bags a year, and the world production, I think, is about 170 million bags, if I'm not
Wow,
wrong. So
that's unbelievable.
it's about 30% of the world coffee production, if you think Arabica and Canephora.
Wow, that's wild. So also for people that are watching, so when we buy coffee, Otus Coffee, when we buy coffee, we're buying like spot buying basically. So we're buying whatever's offered on the market that day, that price. And Jonas, you know, the day that that all went down, I woke up the next day and coffee prices were up almost 50 cents. Um,
Hmm.
and and to give people perspective, like there's the price that the supplier charges, at least for the few that I use, and then there's the market price that they have to abide by,
Hmm.
and the market price was the one that was affected. But to me, I was just like, wow, like
Hmm.
I've only been sourcing large amounts of coffee for, and when I say large amount, I mean like the bigger bags for maybe
Hmm.
a year and a half now, and it was like a shock to my system. Like, wait, you're telling me it went up how much? So for me, I'm like, wow, we got to adjust our buying strategy. And I think, as you know, Jonas, like that's not even the true, we don't even know what the true loss is yet, right? That's going to
Hmm.
come in next year's crop.
Yeah. At the first sight, we are very thinking about how bad the worst the damage was. We thought was less than 15%, but studies made by some cooperatives and association. In some region, we have like something more close to 20%. In some region, we have something about 10%. The final number the official number will be released in about 20 days by the government, because now in Brazil there are a survey and made by some technicians in fields in all the affected areas in Brazil. It was a partnership between the Brazilian supply um, institution, the research institution called Procafé in Brazil, the National Coffee Council in Brazil, and a private company that are using some satellite imagery and some interviews with farmers in the field. And with all this data, we will know for sure that the real number, you know?
Wow.
Uh,
When does that get produced? Or we don't know yet.
about in about 20 days probably,
Wow.
because the data are being collected for 10 or 15 days. There are technicians on field, like agronomists and coffee technicians, to check samples in each region, because have an absolute number is very hard, because Brazil have about 300,000 coffee farms, and in about 1.8 to 2 million hectares of land. So
Wow.
it's impossible to take all the information without doing just samples in some
Sure,
important
sure.
areas, because it will take a year to do that. So they
Right,
are
right.
using these samples and locations visits and satellite imagery that was taken before the frost and after the frost, to see a number that's close with the real damage that we had. We already know the areas which were damaged, which was a place in Minas Gerais called Cerrado, a state of Brazil called Minas Gerais. A part of the Minas Gerais known as south of Minas Gerais, a place in São Paulo state known as Alta Mogiana, a place in the São Paulo state still called Circuito das Águas Paulista, and some places in Paraná state. It was like a stripe, like a line that the frost, the frost, no, is the polar mass walked through, and all this area was damaged. The most damage occurred in Alta Mogiana, São Paulo state, and Cerrado, Minas Gerais state. And this is important because the most important areas in Brazil are these two, in São Paulo and Minas
I've
Gerais.
had
This,
I've had
yeah,
coffee from there. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
a very important city in the northeast of the São Paulo state, the Alta Mogiana. The city is called Franca, and a lot of coffee that is exported came from there. And Cerrado is a very, very important area in Brazil because is where Brazil have the high tech areas with machinery and areas with high production yields. And so when that area is damaged, if we had like 15% of the area damage, probably we lost more than 50% in terms of coffee. Maybe we lost
Wow.
20 or 25 because they produce, their yields are over the national average of yields. So,
Gotcha. I
so
see.
probably the impacts there was be bigger than in others areas. So we are still seeing a lot of data and pictures for bigger farmers, but I'm sure the visits that I did by myself in some areas in Brazil, the damage will be for sure close to 15% at least, because I saw the areas and it was terrible damage. So the next season, just talking about frost, because we having a drought problem in Brazil too. So just
No
thinking
break.
about frost, yeah, we are talking about 15% of the coffee, but we are still worried about the rains that need to start until September, so the coffee could recover for the blossom that we are waiting for the next season.
Wow. So it's almost like too much to even process. So
Mhm.
let's talk about the farmers. Like, what happens next? Let's say a farm loses 50% production, and some of these farmers obviously are living off of just that. Like, what's next? What happens next?
Yeah, this survey that the government and the institution are doing is to check which areas were most affected by the frost, because the governments have release aid about $300 million
Okay,
in to assist these farmers. But this survey will give data to see, okay, this area needs money, this area do not need money. So in terms to give the money to the right farmers. So this is the first, this is a good start for the farmers to have some kind of support to start
right.
again, because if the coffee was damaged and they need to prune the coffee, at least they need to wait about 2 years to get a new harvest season. Because if we prune today, just the branches, for example, if the frost was mild in the tree, we could work with a pruning method that we just cut the branches. So it take
Gotcha.
about 1 year to grow again. So next year we'll have a blossom, and then in 2023 we have a harvest season. So take 2 years. If the coffee was very severely damaged, we need to do stumping. So cut the tree out, let the stump on the ground. So then we have to wait 3 years. So the plant will grow, and then next year sprout new branches, and then the next year, 2024, we have the first season. So
Unbelievable. Lasting
yeah,
effects for
it's
sure.
yeah, and in some cases, like in some farmers that I went, we have areas of the coffee trees that stumping is not enough. They need to take all the tree out and plant again because the tree is completely dead. So just the prune or the cutting will not put the coffee again and sprout, because the tree by itself was dead because of the low temperatures that we had.
Wow. So, what are the temperatures normally in that area? Like, is this a super rare thing, or does it sometimes dip into the 30s? I'm speaking in Fahrenheit, so I apologize. But like,
Yeah.
does it sometimes dip down there, but never get, to
Mhm.
the 32 degrees, or is this just an uncommon thing?
Yeah, no, it's not. Just some annotation in Fahrenheit too. So the perfect temperature for coffee, it's about 62 Fahrenheit to 73 Fahrenheit. This is the best temperature for growing branches, roots, trunk, and flowering. So if we are talking about this temperature, the coffee grows perfectly. But when we reach the temperature after 75 degrees, if we had like a heat wave,
Right,
the
right.
coffee start to feel, and degree by degree is stopped growing until reach 93 Fahrenheit. So when the air temperature reaches 93 Fahrenheit, the coffee is stopped to grow. Uh,
Wow.
in terms of frost, the coffee could survive well until 29 Fahrenheit. The coffee will not grow, but it could resist to this
Right.
temperature. But below that, when you're talking about 28, 26, and 25, if the air temperature reaches to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, is where the frost will kill the whole tree. The tree will not resist we have a sap that circulate inside the tree. The sap
Gotcha.
start to got frost too and start to die. We start to see necrosis. So the sap, which should be green, start to be brown because of the low temperature. And then we have a kind of clog in the trunk, and the tree dies. So it's what happens during the frost. We had not air temperatures, because the frost is a phenomenon that we had some stuff that need to work together, not just
Right,
low
right.
temperature. We have to have like low humidity level, low temperature, and in the day before the frost, we will not have high temperatures during the day to hit the ground. So
Gotcha.
during the night, we need to have no wind too. The air need to be completely not moving, like stop it. We do not feel any blowing, any wind, nothing. So what's happened is the cold air start to pile because we have no wind. So
Right.
if we take a thermometer and put in many layers of the air, we see on the top of the coffee about 24 degrees Fahrenheit, but in the ground we have 24 degrees Fahrenheit. It's this layer of temperature helps to start the frost phenomenon, that
Gotcha.
the leaf starts to be like get ice on the surface, and then inside the leaf cell we have start to form like ice crystals, and then this ice expand and kill the cell. It's like the same when we put a bottle of water inside a freezer and then the water expand and
Right,
break.
right.
It's the same, but with the cell of the tree. So when it's break the cell, what's happened when after that, when the day in the morning, when the day starts to heat up again, this water just flow out of the cell. So we see the leaf is very dried, like it was burned, because all the
Gotcha.
water it's get out because we have no cell to keep all the water inside the cell. So
Very interesting.
the waters to go to the atmosphere. So in the next day, we already on the morning we already see the leaves dried like was burned.
Yeah,
So
I've seen
this
those
is what
pictures. They're just
happens.
like completely brown.
Yeah, it's
Very
just on the
interesting.
morning.
Right,
It's
right.
basically what's happened during the frost. So the Arabica is pretty resistant to low temperatures because, like I told you, 29 degrees is something that impressive for a tropical plant to
Sure.
resist.
Yeah.
But below that, the damages is just scaling up by each degree days grow down. It's very, very fast. So that's why sometimes we have like mild impacts in some areas and just 10, 20 feet in front of that we have terrible damage because it's just a little bit 1 degree and the things happen about this phenomenon of crystallization of the water inside the cell.
Super interesting. I appreciate you diving in like that. I didn't know I guess agronomists, you kind of know this stuff, right? That's really cool, man. So I'm guessing a lot of your partners that you work with were affected as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Many
And
of for me with severe damage, we I from my 12 clients, just two have very severe damage, and about 6 or 7 have mild and medium damage.
gotcha. So we should expect in the next 20 days to possibly see that market go up again, huh? Is that kind of the
Yeah, I think
thought?
it's exactly.
That's
It
crazy,
is
man.
irreversible. I think the market is just waiting a little bit to because when we got the frost, many private companies are releasing numbers and in my opinion, they have no ways to see that because it take like days to
Right.
to see what's the real damage. That's why the Brazilian government is get into that to release an official number using the right technicians and the right protocols to check that and put people that like agronomists that understand coffee in the fields and check satellite imagery and see what's the real damage because I know this satellite images are everyone could get it because the two satellites that is good to check that is one is called Sentinel and the other one is called Landsat and
Okay.
you could buy the imagery from the company. Everyone could do that, but the damage to see if this area effect is coffee or corn or
Interesting.
ground is very complicated if you are not in the field to check
Right.
the data from the ground and from the satellite imageries to see, okay, this is coffee, this is not coffee. So they take the same GPS spot and compare. So we have something to understand, okay, this is just wheat and this is coffee, this is, I don't know, orange or
Sure,
corn,
sure.
and then separate that. So I saw a lot of studies on the internet that some private companies are using just images from satellite, but this is not enough to be sure what
Yeah,
is
it's not
this and
accurate.
what's that. Yeah.
Right, right.
So I hope in 20 days we have like the better number that we could take it to understand better. And maybe after that, the market will start to see that the problem is real, not just because of the frost, because we already have a problem before the drought and before the frost, because Brazil it's a big customer country. We have a domestic market for coffee, which is
Right.
about 21 million bags a year. And last year, we exported about 44 million bags. So we are talking about 65 million bags in one year. So in this season, we will harvest about 44 to 48 million bags of coffee. So we already have enough, we don't have enough coffee to drink it in domestic market and
And
export if we follow the
wow.
same rules from last year. So this is already a problem. We know we have usually traders work with private stocks like warehouses, but since 2014, there's not much of stocks left in the private companies because we have a drought in 2014. So to um, attend the international contracts and internal market, almost all of these stocks was used, and then
I
after
see.
that they never get high as usual because the season would take about 2 or 3 years to get back normal after 2014. So since there, the private stocks are not too high as used to be before 2014. So
Gotcha.
before the frost and before that, we already have a problem that
A
maybe,
deficit,
uh,
basically.
yeah, yes. So maybe next year, I say almost sure next year we will not have coffee enough for exportation and domestic market. So we don't know if this is affect first prices because like you work with final customers, and we have to understand if the customer are willing to pay double price for a pack of coffee that they usually be willing to pay before the frost. We don't know
Right.
if people like coffee like that much, or they just people will start to drink a little bit less to spend a lot of money in one pound of coffee. We don't know because I believe the prices will rise until the next season, and will be a very challenging for roasters. We already
Yeah.
facing this in Brazil. The medium and the small roasters in Brazil are having problem to buy green coffee because of the prices of the domestic market, because the profit margin it's getting so is shrinking.
Yes.
So it's very, very close to no profit.
Yeah.
Uh,
I
but
feel
they,
that.
yeah, they can't put all the charges of the buyer, the final customers. It's really hard to put all this in just like 10 days.
Right,
So
right.
they are very worried if they could keep the roaster going, if they will not put the prices over. And if they put the prices over, the customer will continue to buy as same as before. So we are facing this problem in Brazil too.
I had no idea, first of all, and thank you for all that information. I had no idea that Brazil drank 30% of the production.
Yeah,
That's a
Brazil. Yeah,
big number.
Brazil
33%.
is the Brazil is the second customer of the drinker of coffee. First is United States, and then Brazil in volume of coffee. We drink
That's wild.
about in kilos. It's 68 kilos a year per capita, which is about 13 pounds, I think so, per year of coffee. So we really drink a lot of coffee here too.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I think, you've heard about all the big companies. Of course, they contract because they're buying so much coffee,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they're somewhat protected from what I understand. But when you're talking about small and medium-sized roasters like
Mm-hmm.
us, I mean, the margin
Mm-hmm.
shrinks overnight, and it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty eye-opening to
Mm-hmm.
wake up. Because last year, coffee was pretty cheap when I first
Mm-hmm.
started buying, bigger bags of coffee. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I looked at a sheet from last year and it was like, oh my God, it's $1 cheaper per pound. I mean, which is a big
Mm-hmm.
number when you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
what your margins are. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's going to just take a lot of communication like this, talking about it, making sure people understand like what's going on with production of a cup of coffee. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge conversation. And to me, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
where do you even begin to try to explain this to people?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I love doing chats like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Super interesting, super interesting. And I
And
think,
okay, okay.
go ahead.
Oh, and just sometimes people think, okay, the farmers, at least in Brazil, that is where I work at, the farmers will get a better price for their coffee now, but the costs of the inputs are getting so higher too,
Right.
because due to the pandemic, we have inflation and many stuff that farmers use, like fertilizers and equipment and gasoline and oil and everything is getting expensive since
Yep.
the beginning of the pandemic. And even in Brazil, we have a devaluation of the Brazilian currency, and the dollar is now very expensive in Brazil. So usually the fertilizers that farmers use in Brazil are imported for other country, and the price is it's dollar priced. So last year, for example, a fertilizer cost about, let's say, $500, and now it's costing double price. It's $1,000 the same ton of the same fertilizer because of inflation and Brazilian currency devaluation. So
Wow.
a bigger price in coffee do not mean directly more profit for the farmer,
Sure,
because
sure.
for this season he will need to put more money in the same area that he put last
That's
season.
crazy, man. I feel like ever since I've been in the industry, and I'm sure it's been, obviously it's been going on for years, but I feel like the farmers just never get a break. I feel like
Yeah.
there's always something, no matter what country it is, there's always,
Hmm.
and it's really not a laughable subject, but it's just like unbelievable
Hmm.
how
Hmm.
things just keep going against the farmers, which is super unfortunate.
It's
Crazy.
was a crazy year. I was
Yeah.
talking with a agronomist and from another area, and he talks to me about the crazy year that we are being in farms, because we harvest two seasons in pandemic, and we have to put people on fields to harvest coffee. We have three droughts, one last year, one in the from February to April, and then now we are facing another drought, which starts about May, and since now we have just a little rain, and then we have frost.
That's
All in the
crazy.
same in things about 1 year and a half, and
Right.
farmers have to deal with that, because field is something I always said when the pandemic starts. If we are talking about a company or an industry, the company could shut down the doors and send the employees to the house and wait 30 days. But in the fields, the things does not work in that way, because the
Right.
coffee trees do not wait to 30
Sure.
days. So
Sure.
the
Sure.
farmers need to be on the ground. So they need to hire people to come and work. So no matter what's happened, the farmers need to get going to keep the farm working and have some to have some profit in the future.
Wow. I like to be optimistic and say this is if we can get through
Hmm.
this, we can get through anything, right? But that's maybe
Hmm.
just me
Yes.
being optimistic. I mean, it's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. Well,
Hmm.
look, I think this was a lot of information. I think I appreciate your time again. I hope to one day make it down to Brazil and other countries to just
I hope
visit.
so.
I sadly enough have not been to a coffee farm yet, which is really sad to say. I had plans to do it last year, and obviously those plans were changed on me last minute. So I think
Hmm.
2022 is going to be the year when we get down. So I would love to,
Hmm.
whether it's Central America or South America, I
Hmm.
would love to come visit you, man.
Yeah, you're welcome to wherever you want to come.
Yeah, yeah. And I think maybe we'll touch base again in 2 months or so and kind of
hmm
look back on, see what the report comes out
hmm
on the loss, and just
hmm
kind of talk more about it. I think it's, again, I love talking about this. I think some people are interested in it, especially if you're a coffee drinker.
hmm
So thanks again. I appreciate it, Jonas. You're full of knowledge. I feel like every time we get on these calls, I like to just sit back, sip on some coffee, and listen because you're a wealth of knowledge, and we appreciate your time big time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I think it's very important to share information and very like trustable information. All the information that I give to you about this survey, it's something that is in official websites, though there is no fake news about it because
Sure.
I heard about some people from another countries that they are think the frost was fake just to rise the market up, and sometimes I feel kind of sad because, I've been in the farms and it's really, really tragic to see farmers lost so many work in just two
Right.
days. And I always happy to share what I saw in the fields, and I always share my day in the Instagram in the farms that I've been, which have frost. All the information, the picture that I take it is available on my Instagram if everyone want to check it. And I'm happy to share information. If someone want to talk about that, feel free to reach me here on Instagram or
Awesome.
read some of my articles. I always write articles about Brazil and Brazilian production and history of coffee in Brazil. So
I've read
I
them
love
all,
to
and
share
they're
information.
fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. And I'll tag you in this. I'm gonna post this. So if anyone's listening and you want to follow Jonas, you should. If you have any interest on the farm and what's going on in the industry, please give him a follow. He's, again,
Yeah.
if you watch the video, you'll know he's a wealth of knowledge. So awesome.
Thank you.
Jonas, thank you again, man. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And let's talk. Let's talk in the next 60 days.
Thank you. Happy to be here, and thank you all the viewers for being here today. And feel free to talk.
Yes. Thanks, Jonas. Have a good day. Thanks,
You
everybody.
too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.